One of the things that I think is worth mentioning by the naval officer is that there is a division of labour amongst the US military services on the UFO ET issues. The Army, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, they're in charge of security and bases. So, for example, Dulce, New Mexico, there is an underground facility at Dulce, New Mexico. I was at the first Dulce conference that was held there in March of this year, and it's pretty clear. I mean, the locals came forward and they told their story. There is a lot of things happening over there in Dulce involving underground military operations, Delta Force, Army people are all over the place. UFOs are seen all the time. UFOs are, and extraterrestrials. Should mention that extraterrestrials, that the police at Dulce have confirmed that yes, their citizens have been abducted by extraterrestrials and have been subjected to various experiments or activities that the extraterrestrials are conducting. So there's confirmation that yes, there is military activities at Dulce, yes, there is an underground facility at Dulce, and yes, there is extraterrestrial activities in the vicinity of the Dulce underground base. And some of the witnesses that have come forward to talk about the underground base at Dulce have always talked about Delta Force, Army security, and Department of Energy personnel. US Air Force, according to this Navy officer, is in charge of technology and contact. So I mentioned the Eisenhower ET meetings, 1954, 1955. Bill Kirkland and Art Campbell talked about the 55 meeting. I talked about the 54 meeting in other conferences and also in an earlier book. The US Air Force was involved in that. So this checks out that the Edwards Air Force Base, Holloman Air Force Base were used for these meetings. So it does seem that the US Air Force is involved in these face-to-face contacts with extraterrestrials. So the Air Force conducts these diplomatic negotiations or hosts them, and that the technology is developed through the Air Force. The Navy is in charge of policy, apparently, that the way in which these technologies and these personnel that have been given need-to-know access are deployed, that these are all kind of policy issues, that the Navy is responsible for that, that there is a secret space fleet, an astronaut corps, and actually President Reagan actually mentioned this in his the Reagan diaries. There's an entry from 1995 where he talks about having a space shuttle capacity of 300 people. Well, you know, think about it. The space shuttle takes 5 to 7, and a maximum you could have 8 people in any of the space shuttles. 5 space shuttles were built that were operational for space travel. There was a 6th shuttle that was really a testing shuttle. But that makes 5 shuttles. Well, you think about how many times would you have to fly the space shuttle up into space to kind of put 300 people in orbit? And how could you host them in orbit? The International Space Station doesn't have anything like that capacity. And in 1985, the International Space Station was just an idea.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. Thank you all. God bless you all.
Why would the Navy be interested in disclosing to civilian researchers that there are official or secret meetings being hosted at the United Nations concerning UFOs? Why is the Navy concerned about this? This is my explanation. This is my kind of theory for it. I think that the corporations have taken over an inordinate influence or control of UFO ET files. In 1969, according to Ben Rich, he talked about the Nixon administration kind of undergoing a purge where control of UFO files passed from the military to corporate hands. And we kind of see this in whistleblowers that have come forward. For example, Project Camelot, they have this archivist X who has come forward, and he disclosed that in 1985 he worked for 6 months in a corporation that actually had all of these secret government files and documents and all material concerning UFOs and extraterrestrial life. And yes, UFOs are real, and yes, there have been meetings, and yes, extraterrestrials are very much part of the equation, and there have been abductions. That these were all things that he saw in these files that were in a corporate facility. Why not in a military facility? No, they've been shifted out of the military's facilities, out of any government agency, and placed into the hands of these corporations. And where is this secret UFO ET archive now? Well, it's with Boeing. The Boeing Corporation holds this secret archive. So is it any wonder that Boeing was trying to declassify some of the anti-gravity files? New World Order is based on the ascendancy of transnational corporations, which would benefit the most from loss of policy influence of the US Navy. I think that overall, if we look at what is the New World Order, how does that kind of present itself? How would it like to develop? Basically, it would be the ascendancy of transnational corporations. Transnational corporations would have all control, all influence, or anything of any great significance would be a trade secret where corporations would make the decision as to who has need-to-know access, as to which of these files, which of these technologies will be developed, will be released to the public, and that those that have these positions on these transnational corporations, they would be the ones that would have all the power. And I think the US Navy quite correctly has understood that this is a threat to American sovereignty and a threat to the interests of the Navy. And I think that's why they're doing this. Threats against UN diplomats are claimed to originate from several corporations. The UN diplomats that were part of these meetings in February 12, 13, 14, 2008, and there were subsequent meetings, that these UN diplomats have been threatened. We've had independent corroboration of this, and senior diplomats have said that they have been threatened by entities that if they talk about the UFO meetings, that they would suffer severe consequences. And these diplomats were frightened that whoever was doing this were very powerful entities. And according to this Navy officer that's been part of these disclosures, that Clay and Sean Pickering were the ones that were responsible for first alerting myself and then alerting others to these Navy officials, that this officer basically said that those threats were traced by the Navy to several corporations, so that the corporations are involved in basically preventing the disclosure of UFOs. So what are some of the conclusions that we can draw? UFO Disclosure Alliance in the Obama administration, former Clinton-era officials, Clinton, Panetta. I think that there is an alliance here of interests that coincide in terms of greater openness and having the secrecy overcome, because it is a real threat, I think, to American sovereignty.